43. I live in Michigan. And when I first met Leah, I was actually just joining that page of her food sensitivity group. At that point, I was researching those Everly Well tests because I really just felt super lost in the medical world. Went to
Yeah.
several specialists, family doctors, gastroenterologists. It was ridiculous. And it was years and years of dealing with it. And as I've gotten older, symptoms have only manifested and gotten worse. I
Mhm.
worse to a point that it affected not just my stomach or my overall system, it was affecting my skin, it was affecting my body and how it reacted, how it felt, how I slept at night. I mean, it was a whole system effect. And you would explain this to a doctor, and they would just look at you like they had no idea what you were talking about. Because if they didn't have that magic pill that it prescribed to you, it was basically, well, I think you just need to take something with anxiety, or maybe you need to talk to a therapist. It was always centered around my mental state of health versus something physical that was happening. So I really was at my last strain and just didn't know where to turn. So going on your Facebook page was just such a godsend. And I think it was totally fate taking its course because I knew I was just at the end of where I could go with dealing with my symptoms.
Yeah. Gosh, that is such a powerful description too of what happens so often, that it's just your mental health. Like, yes, our gut issues affect our mental health, but clearly there were things going on in your body. There were very physiological things happening, and a lot of physical symptoms. And not that none of those can ever manifest from a psychological thing, but that you really weren't heard, I think, is a big part of it. And I think it's a big part of the healing process is to find someone who can kind of hear you and hear where you're at. So yeah, it's such a common story. I think, like, you've had the workup, blood work looks good, so you must be fine. You've got to
Yeah,
be
I had
fine, and you're like,
several
I do not feel
colonoscopies.
fine.
Right, several colonoscopies, everything looked fine. You
Yeah.
went and did all the testing, everything looked fine. And it finally, of course, I think it becomes a mental health issue because you literally go nuts thinking, this is in my head. Like, I'm going through these symptoms and I can see it and I can feel it, but they're telling me I'm okay. So you start to believe it. You really do.
Yeah. And I think, that's one of the pieces that I really hope to work with people to see too, is that knowing and trusting yourself and your body, and that you knew there was something wrong. There wasn't a doubt in your mind, but these doubts were implanted into your mind, by suggestions from doctors. It's really hard to write off what a doctor is saying for us. As a culture, we really um take the word of our doctors really seriously. And it makes a lot of sense. They have a lot of training and a lot of expertise and a lot of knowledge, but so do we in our bodies. And, there's so much wisdom. And so, knowing and pressing forward, I think honoring that you were like, there is still something really wrong. I'm not just going to accept that I have to be in this place. I think that is really amazing. Um, so what's different now? What do you feel like has shifted? We worked together for a good chunk of time, and I know you've seen some really amazing changes in your life. So what are you seeing and feeling that's different for you? What shifts have happened? Yeah, anything along that lines that you want to talk a little bit about would be awesome.
My whole life has changed. I mean, literally. And that sounds
Mm,
so crazy,
that
but
sounds
I went from someone who
amazing.
felt like every day you woke up and you would run to the bathroom. I would go to work crying in pain. My stomach hurt so bad. And I had to go to work and act like everything was fine. Or
Right.
you would be the person that would find where a bathroom was that no one would go to in your building because you were so embarrassed the fact that you had nonstop stomach problems. And I'm sure my family was tired of hearing me complain that my stomach hurt. It just, it caused anxiety because you knew it was coming, you felt it, you didn't want to go places. I didn't want to go out with my friends or go away on the weekend. I was so
Yeah.
nervous about that. So it totally changed my life. And I can say a lot of the people I know, especially on your Facebook page, are on that point where I was looking at those at home tests
Mhm.
or looking at what your program was. And my conclusion ultimately was I'm tired of, so you're going to go get this test and it's going to come back and tell you, well, it could be all of these. Well, that's what your doctor tells you. It could be all of this, but it might not be. So where do you start again? I didn't want to be back at that point where I'm in this clueless area in the dark and I have to try to figure this out myself. I wanted someone to truly be there to commiserate with me and understand where I was coming from and guide me down that path. And that's exactly what you did.
Awesome. Oh my gosh, that's so amazing to hear you say that too, and to hear that it's impacted your life. And that I know I know from our work together that it's been huge. That you've had a lot of relief. You've had a lot of really good changes that have happened. But to hear you say that your whole life has changed just feels like I got goosebumps. You know, it feels so that feels so strong and so powerful, and like that you aren't having to worry about those things every day is just incredible. And I am here for guidance, but you are the one who put in the work, you put in the time. So I think it's really important to honor that, like, you know, you were willing to change your diet to explore and figure out what you needed.
But you just know once you figure it out and you know how it feels good to feel this good, why would you sabotage yourself?
And I remember you saying too that, you know, the setbacks, maybe it was after you got back from your Florida trip, that the well, I'd love for you to talk about your Florida trip a little bit, because that felt like such a big moment in your process and in your journey. But also after you got back, that you had splurged, and I remember you saying, you know, I had some setbacks, I had some symptoms, but they weren't like what they used to be. It didn't feel the same, you know? So it's like, even with that splurging, that's such a good sign that your gut has healed so much. And like for you, because there are a variety of foods that, you know, trigger you over time, like the goal would be as you heal and spend more time in that healing place that you get to add some of those foods back in, you know, maybe not some of the bigger ones, but some of the other things that, you know, just kind of don't work as well for you. So do you want to
Absolutely.
tell a little bit about your Florida trip? I feel like that was a big moment.
Yeah, and it was towards the end of my program with you. So I feel like I was in a good place where in the beginning, my gut was not still healthy. So a
Yeah.
lot of the times when I was incorporating things, I would still have really bad setbacks. And so that was a little disheartening, but luckily we just went to Florida in the middle of January to Universal. So you're talking about a big theme park and what's there, just unhealthy foods galore. You can prepare as much as you try to, but when you're in the moment, there's not much you can do. Luckily, I was so thankful that I went ahead and booked the restaurants ahead of time and I spent the time to prepare, knowing we were going to have to sit down and eat nice meals. We couldn't go to fast food. And all of the restaurants were very accommodating with my ridiculous requests of all the foods I could not have. And I spent the trip feeling great, and I actually lost weight because of it.
It's so awesome.
So
I know
it
you're
was
like,
on vacation to
I
come
lost weight
back and you're
while
like,
on vacation.
I lost weight.
That does not normally happen for people.
No,
And you felt so good, and like you just seemed like your confidence, you just seemed like you felt so good and happy that like I was able to go out to eat all of these days, because you guys were in a hotel room too, right? So like
yeah,
without a kitchen. Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. That's really
yep.
awesome.
I feel like, I don't feel deprived in the fact that I don't eat the things I used to. Like I can't have gluten and I can't have dairy. That's
Yeah,
huge and it's in so much.
yeah,
But like tonight we had fish on the Blackstone and I would love to have had like, breaded fish, right? You
yeah.
just, you crisp it up a little more and it tastes just like it. I mean, there's those types of factors that you just learn to work around. And I don't think of it as a sacrifice. Like my biggest thing with you was I gave up drinking Diet Coke. I had Diet Coke. Drink coffee in the
Yeah.
morning, go right to Diet Coke and drink that till I went to bed. Giving that up, I know you were surprised, and I'm like, I'm just gonna do it. And I did it because I
And
knew
you
I
did it
was.
quickly. Like right after we started, you're like, I'm just done with it. I'm like, okay, that's amazing.
And not to say I don't have an occasional one, but it just was something that if I was gonna do this, I wanted to put the effort in to do it right because I wanted to change how I was feeling.
Yeah.
And the fact that I sleep the best I've ever slept
That's what
is
I was just thinking
huge.
as you were saying that, that your
Mhm.
sleep changed so much because that caffeine and the sugar and, all the things in Diet Coke weren't
I never
interrupting.
realized it. I never thought that would keep me up at night. And it wasn't that like I was awake. I just never slept well. I tossed and turned. I mean, I actually dream now, which is so weird to me.
It's
So,
awesome.
there's a big difference with that. And I think of the
Yeah.
biggest thing with you is learning how to take some time, which I'm still working on taking time for myself, but just taking that moment to read how your body's feeling. And I give it that. Like if I'm feeling tired, I go to bed early. I'm not pushing myself beyond my limits.
Yeah.
And I think that's a huge anxiety helper. And I think that's a big piece today that no one listens to their body like they should be.
Yeah, I think it's one of the most important things because if you can learn to kind of read that, because it's a process, right? Like it sounds really simple, but there's a learning curve to being able to like really pick up on the messages and really being able to form the habit to take that time to even slow down. So that's awesome that that's been really helpful. I think that is the tool that I think helps people the most is really learning how to check in and be like, how do these foods affect me? How do these activities affect me when I push myself? Like you're saying, how does that affect me? And hopefully, some of the menstrual cycle work that we did too
Mhm.
helps with that because it's just all about honoring your body and listening to your body. So, and there's times of the month that it's way better to be social and times when it's better to just kind of, and times in our life phases and different things going on that I think checking in is so valuable. So I'm glad that's been helpful for you.
Say overall, this has been a great helping process. Even my doctor remarked on it. I went and saw him. I think I was in the middle of working with you. He remarked at how like my weight was down, my blood pressure was down.
Yeah. Oh,
There was
good.
a lot of factors that had changed. So he could just see the difference in just the first month.
And I love that your doctor is seeing those things, that's like physical evidence that that looking at your nutrition, looking at your food, looking at what serves you like really works. And I mean, for your weight, like that was, I know a goal for you too. And I just think about that and I'm like, in such a short amount of time, like you dropped a decent amount of weight
About
and
15 pounds. Yeah.
15
And I
pounds.
think
That's
a lot of it was
incredible.
inflammation,
Yeah.
irritation and inflammation. I really
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. Well, do you have any like words of wisdom for other women who are feeling, kind of where you were at the beginning, maybe feeling stuck, a little bit hopeless? They don't know what to do, they don't know where to go. Do you have anything that might be helpful for them to hear?
It's not hopeless. It's just a process. If they're literally willing to make changes in their lifestyle, it can work, but it takes time and it does take effort. So
Yeah.
I'm thankful that I was able to do the program with you because it made the process so much easier. And having that weight to lean on, someone that could, support me through it, I think that's just a huge key. I think trying to do it on your own, it's like dieting on your own. How do you start? Where do you go? Where do you go for support?
Yeah.
I mean, you have to have that connection where you can talk with someone and have them think things through. Because there was a few times where I just couldn't figure out what was one of the sticking points that was causing my problems. And you were able to sit down with me and go through things, and we were able to figure it out together.
Yeah, there's something about not being the person in that situation, like having that support, having another person, but then also having a more objective
Mhm.
person to see what's going on. Because I know for me still, I mean, I know so much on this topic, and I still am such a firm believer in having support, like if I'm going through something, because just having someone to reflect and be like, hey, there's this other thing that maybe we're missing, or I'm seeing a pattern here that wasn't showing up for you, like those kind of things. So I think that's so important for people to hear, that it just expedites the process. And sometimes I tried to DIY it myself as well for a really long time, and I remember when I got support, it was like that, it was like, oh, all these things just started opening up and falling into place, and like I had that little bit of extra knowledge that for me was the piece of information I needed. So
It seems like it's an expensive amount of money, but when you think about how much have you spent in the years and years of going through it, I just can't even fathom the amount of time too. I
yeah,
was done with the time factor. I think that was my biggest push. I was
yeah,
done spending the time finding another specialist, going to another doctor, starting the whole thing over. I I just it's too precious for that. That
and
was my big push.
not gaining what you were setting out to gain.
Mhm.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing, Carrie. Like, I just think this is so valuable to hear. And I'm so happy that you're feeling good, and that you found so much relief and feel in control of these things. And, obviously it's a journey that will continue, but like, hopefully what that looks like is that it's adding foods back in as you're able to, or like being able to splurge and not feeling it as much, that kind of thing. So anyway, thanks for sharing. It's so valuable.
Absolutely. Thank you.